Welcome back. My name's Rick Manners. I'm going to talk on this video a little bit about the Nelles Public School mural that I did several years ago. I've mentioned this in a couple of my videos, but I was invited by a bunch of the teachers at the school to come and look at their library, and this was back in 2000, and they had been to another school where they had decorated the library as a rainforest theme to try to get the kids to try and spend more time in the actual library. So I went there and did some photographs, and they had basic bookshelves on the wall, and they had these big purple columns holding the ceiling up, and we wanted to do something unique to make that environment really, really friendly. And I said to the teachers, your school is actually on the site of the original neutral Indian village that was here in Grimsby back 1,000 years ago. And so I thought that would be a great theme to sort of recreate what Grimsby would have looked like back when the neutral Indians inhabited the area. They discovered that there was a village right there on the site because there was they were going to build the new survey in behind the school back in 1976, and when they started to do the digging for the infrastructure, they came up with all these human remains and all these artifacts, and the Royal Ontario Museum was called in the fall of 1977 to do an archaeological dig, and that's where they discovered this was the original village for the people that lived here and their burial ground. And in their publications from the ROM, you can see they had all different types of burial sites and thousands of artifacts that were taken out of the ground. So all these items were then cataloged by the ROM, and then all the human remains were reinterned back into the area, into the ground, and all the artifacts are now stored at the Brantford Museum for the Mohawk. So one thing I did first was I said this would be a great theme. I'll start by photographing the Niagara Escarpment from one end of Grimsby at the west end to the east end. And this was the feature that the natives were looking for, is that protection from the escarpment, the distance from the escarpment to the lake for traveling back and forth to the other tribes. I also wanted to focus the mural on all the different wildlife in the area, because the wildlife was what they would have relied on for both their natural resources as well as their spiritual beliefs. So in my mural, I want to really focus on a lot of the animals that are indigenous to this area. The first phase would be the actual mural itself, showing the Niagara Escarpment of Grimsby and all the wildlife that inhabited that area. The second phase was going to be some sort of a piece of furniture that the kids could sit in. I was thinking of maybe a dugout canoe. And the third area was the computer area of the library, the inside of a longhouse. So I have all the computers built into the log walls. And we went in Brantford to look at the actual artifacts. We got to see all the different types of items that were taken out of the ground back in 1976-77. And at the same time, they had a powwow going on, and so we went and watched, and I took a lot of photographs, and I saw this young lad who was doing one of his ceremonial dances, and as he was waiting at the side, he was watching this red-tailed hawk soaring in the sky, and I was fascinated with that idea. So somewhere in the mural, I want to have this little boy. So when I got back to my studio, I did a quick sketch of him looking up into the sky, watching this red-tailed hawk soaring in the sky. And we started off by introducing it to the media. This is what we were planning on doing. And in July 3rd of 2000, I started on the actual painting, stripped the library down, and here's the finished first phase of it. So looking straight ahead at that one wall, that's where Wolverton Road would be today. And as it comes across, there's where the Beamer Point and the Beamer Falls. Downtown Grimsby would have been a flooded wetland area, so the creek would have meandered down from there down to Lake Ontario. And as you look through the library, you'll go all the way down to the far end of the room, and that's where Park Road would be today. And then in the mural, I wanted to have the little boy. So at that far end is sort of the area where the children gather when there's story time and when there's things that are done in that big open area. So the young boy's getting ready to tell a story, and he's watching the red-tailed hawk that's going by. And all of the animals are gathering to listen to his story. So I've got the fox and the wolf, herons flying by in the sky. So all the animals are actually facing the young lad. I'm going to have a black bear and a beaver. And yeah, we did have black bears in this area because they did discover the skulls and the teeth that they used in their dress. So the actual area itself, I don't want anything on the wall, so I'm going to actually custom build a book rack that's going to fit down, so it looks like the animals are actually sitting on top of the book rack. And the kids can actually kneel down and take their books from the floor area, and they can also sit on the shelf. Some more media coverage of the project itself. And then on each of the posts of the bookshelves that are attached to the wall, I want to have little critters kind of here and there, also that the children have to look through the whole mural to see if they can find the different types types of animals. This was a quote that I put on from Jim Henson. I did some work with him back in the 70s and 80s. And we started to get some media coverage now. They had the media come in and do different photographs. At the far end where the 40 Mile Creek is, I want to have a deer coming out of the forest, bringing her fawn out for the first time. So there they are. And at that time, the actual Peregrine Falcon Foundation had come into the school to give some presentations. And the children kept coming up to me afterwards saying, Mr. Manners, we've got to get this Peregrine Falcon into the mural somehow. So I had been studying the ones that are nesting in Hamilton. So I used the photographs and sketches I did, looking back toward the 40 Mile Creek. And there's the scene itself there. And then we got ready for our first public opening, and I took a bunch of my sketches and I had them framed, and we raffled off a lot of these to help raise money for the project itself. And this is our original committee of teachers and parents from the Parents Council that helped put this whole project together. And then we actually asked the Brantford Museum if we could actually borrow some of the artifacts back to put on display, because none of these items had been seen since the day they were taken out of the ground. And they said as long as we could get the proper showcases, they would allow that to happen. And we did. Our local Grimsby Museum allowed us to borrow their portable showcases, and we placed them throughout the school. And we brought the school children in so they could actually see all of these artifacts, both from that school and surrounding schools as well. And we had interpreters there that would tell them all about who these people were and how important all these artifacts were. And again, we got some more media coverage once the phase one of the mural was completed. And that week of that open house, we had a whole week of Native studies for the school children. So we had everything from music to story writing to arts and crafts, all to do about the Natives. And we had all different types of people come in different groups to teach the children all about the Native people from the area. And then after that was over in 2002, a year later, I started the second phase of the project, and this was an interior wall, which I wanted to bring the escarpment back around. And I had a little short-eared owl who was perching on one of the posts there. And then it kind of wrapped in behind where the librarian's desk is in this big, ugly purple column. And then at that same time, the Harry Potter movie was out, so they were asking me if I would stick a snowy owl in there somewhere. And there's the snowy owl sitting out on the librarian's desk, kind of peeking out over the top of her computer. Then in the one corner by the exit, I wanted to do all different types of waterfowl. So I've got a mute swan and a wood duck and a Canada goose and a mallard taking flight. Door handle going out that door, I had a greater yellow legs and a little turnstone sort of perched on the door handle itself. And they're all facing the little boy trying to listen to what his story is about. And again, some more media coverage about the project. In Toronto, I had built a large tree as a teaching tool for the children all about the Humber Valley. And this is at Humber College at the Children's Arboretum. And we used that tree as a teaching tool and as a tool for the sponsors as well, to attach sponsors' leaves onto it. So I wanted to do something with that big purple column, and I made a proposal to turn that into an actual tree inside the library. So I started with my sketch, and one of the things we had to do, because it was inside a school area, the actual leaves themselves had to be special fireproof material. So I actually found a company in California that made these silk fire retardant material into the size of maple leaves. And at that time I proposed this was how I was going to construct the trunk and the branches for the tree. And what I had to do was actually find a special fire retardant materials that we would use on the tree itself. So we ended up with this fire control paint and primers. I then had to produce samples of the trunk and the branches, and I gave them to our local fire prevention officer, and he did burn tests on this material that I was going to use in the library, and then wrote the recommendation that we could proceed with the project. And here we go. I started with concrete forming tubes and got them all prepped with the fire retardant material. I made plaster castings of my branches. Into the steel pole, I drilled in these big 4-inch steel studs where my branches were going to actually attach to the trunk. And there's one of the branches getting ready to be attached. I wanted to look like this tree was growing through the building and the branches were reaching out up into this skylight area. And then I started by plastering and making coats on the trunk itself. And there I'm plastering the actual joins of the branches onto, and I'm sculpting the plaster into to make it look like bark. The other desk is going to go up against the tree, so that I wanted to widen it at the bottom. And then I wanted in the center of the tree, I wanted like a giant knot hole, so you could have like a little bird peeking out of there. And I wanted it to look almost like a face on, make the tree look alive. And so here's some of the paint, the fireproof paint that's going on it. And I'm starting to sculpt the bark on the tree and painting in the details of the bark itself. There's the opening for the hole. And then in the hole, I had a little house sparrow kind of perched on the edge watching, and there's a little dragonfly up in the corner. And then we finally found our leaves in California, so we ordered them, and I had to wait a couple of months for them to get here because we had over 2,000 leaves that now had to be all hand attached onto the branches. So in January 2005, while I'm waiting for the leaves to arrive, I decided to work on the back section, which is going to be the golden eagle. I'm going to have 2 large eagles in this mural, and they're going to be 3-dimensional, where they're actually sticking out of the wall. And so I went to my studio and sketched up the big eagle that's going to go in behind the librarian's desk. And I wanted it on sort of a broken tree, a tree that had broken over in a storm. And this was the tree I was going to use that I photographed. Then I took an 8-foot-high piece of my hardboard that I do my regular acrylic paintings on, prepared it, did the actual sketch, and then cut it out, and then started to paint it in my actual studio. And here it is, almost completed. I've left the bottom part on there for support. And once it was completed and varnished, I then had it finished cutting it out and then brought it into the actual library itself. Then I attached a foam spacer in behind that before I attached it to the wall, so it would look like the eagle was sticking away from the mural. There I am attaching it on. And then the one branch on that one corner, I didn't like the way it kind of just abruptly ended. So I got another piece of board and I extended out the branch itself, cut it out, painted it, and attached. And then the leaves finally arrived. And over the next year, I ended up attaching over 2,200 leaves onto this tree one at a time, positioning them, making sure where all the lights were in the ceiling so it made it look like sunlight coming down through, and hand painting all of the branches and the knots. So I wanted it to look like a tree growing inside the library, looking out, and the kids could actually walk underneath this tree. And it was all filled with butterflies and moths and different insects from the area. Fergie Jenkins came in to check out my mural one time, and I gave him a quick little tour, showing him the tree and some of the paintings that I had done in the mural itself. And then after that was completed, I focused my attention back to the other corner where the 40 Mile Creek is, and I want to do a little girl there now. And she's going to be thinking about her grandfather and how lucky they are and what her past was like when people were just starting to come to this area. So here's the corner I'm going to use, and I sort of masking taped out where the little girl was going to be. And then I started on the grandfather. So I want to have that image sort of hidden in the trees because she's almost thinking about what her grandfather was like. And his name was Eagle Spirit. And so there's the grandfather starting to come. And once I had completed that, I'm now going to push that right back into the mural so it looks like a ghosty image. So there's the finished painting. And then I airbrushed it back in to make it look ghosty. And then I started on the little girl in the foreground. And there I am working on her, and there she is completed with her beads and the feathers in her hair. And then up across the top, I want my second 3-dimensional eagle, which is going to be the bald eagle. And here it is. I'm working on it now in the studio. It's about 4 feet long, 48 inches long. And then once it was completed, I put the foam in behind and brought it in and attached it to the mural. And there's my completed corner. And then came 2007 when they did an expansion to the school, and I came in that time to see that the staff room and the kitchen that was behind my wall had been removed. They were expanding the computer library. So I had to go in and actually repair the 2 ends of the inside wall. That was where the little short-eared owl was. So I repaired the 2 ends from the wall. Now the tree was actually in a corner because that was the corner that led into the staff room. So now I had a big bald spot in my tree. I had to add on another branch, so there's an additional branch into that corner, and add another 300 leaves to the tree to sort of make it fill in that big bald spot I had up against the ceiling. This is where we are today. That I'm looking at wanting to do something with the computer section, looking out onto Lake Ontario, something about lightning and electricity. So there's my proposal for that section of the walls of the mural. And then the free in-standing side wall, I want to do something about the storyteller. So I want to have an actual native storyteller, a couple of campfires, and the kids will be able to envision the different artifacts in the flames, the dancers, the people of the area. And I'm going to actually take his shield and emboss the school logo onto there as well. So which is the Nelles Hawk. And thank you for watching my project here. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about it in the near future. Thank you.